Hello and welcome to Vision Denial. My name is Sam, and this is the Road to MSI Meet the Teams. If you're new here, I've watched every single playoff of every single region, asterisk the EMEA region. I did not watch Rent Tour season. And we're going to be discussing every team that has qualified. First and foremost, Bilibili Gaming, the 5th seed in playoff, qualifying for the 2nd seed at MSI. This relative upstart team with no expectations of success demolished and overcame all of those boundaries to make it here, falling short of the 1st seed. So let's take a look at these fire starters. Let's start about the coaching staff. We've got over here head coach Tabe, previously known for being the support player for Starhorn Royal Club in the finals of the 2013 World Championship and having created the trend of anti-support, as well as having been the coach and analyst for Royal Never Give Up before joining Bilibili as the head coach in March, and notably just before playoffs started, where you can tell there's a swing in how they played. We also have Big Way, who was previously the coach of J-Team, this Southeast Asian representative, coming in after 2 years to become the assistant coach to Bilibili. To note, within the style of this particular team, you'll notice they have a huge amount of bans against them for Kindred, notably because of Shun and the way that they play around neutrals. Notably, they're 8th in game duration, 7th in gold per minute. We don't have, again, LPL has some limitations for statistics to gather them, but 10th in first turrets, only 51.5% of the games that they get them, 12th in damage per minute, ties 8th in kills per game, 3rd in deaths per game, 9th in kill-death ratios, and 11th in Drakes, 7th in Heralds. And there is a key aspect to keep in mind here is that there is a huge discrepancy pre- and post-playoffs, and hence why they seem so middling or under average despite the hype that comes with it. So let's discuss some of these particular discrepancies in the players as well. Let's meet Bin, most known for his finals performance in the 2020 World Championships and the only player to get a pentakill in World's Finals, with a brief jump to Royal Never Give Up in 2022 before coming to Bilibili for the 13th season. Amongst his top laners, he's 11th in KDA, 2nd, however, in CS per minute, 3rd in gold per minute, 11th in damage per minute, 11th in kill participation, and 8th in kill share, but is 2nd for the number of champions played, and 3rd in gold share amongst his other top laners as being the 2nd most for his team, so that's notable in a particular sense. He's really used for heavy side lane threats, large chunk of the gold used efficiently developing his own leads to help separate their opponents apart. Bin particularly is noted as one of, if not the best top laners of the LPL, and it shows with the confidence in his champion diversity, as well as how much gold they're willing to allocate to him just to get side lane pressure. Bilibili being one of the few teams that actually uses 1-4 or 1-3-1 compositions as stated, and not just as flavor for advantages in the laning phase. He takes his advantages and really pushes it so that it's hard for anybody else to want to contest him, because he will just take over. And let's meet Shun, the jungler for Bilibili Gaming. Previously having been part of Invictus Gaming since April of 2020, joining Bilibili for the 13th season professionally, and for most of the bans that exist across all of the regions so far, he is the number one reason why there are Kindred bans, and Kindred seems to have an uptick. But there's a couple of things that are very mixed about his particular stats. And remember, pre and post playoffs are weird for Bilibili. Shun has the lowest KDA, ties in 6th for creeps per minute, 7th in gold per minute, 8th in damage per minute, 12th in kill participation, 7th in kill share, and is part of a 4-way tie for 5th place in gold share. And then ties for 10th place in champions played. He has one of the lowest amount of diversities in champions, really favoring around these top 3 that he's got going, and is very heavy in skirmishing, right? But he's also notable in the ways that he enables neutral objectives and his skirmishes around the map. He's fairly average otherwise overall in terms of his other junglers that are going to be in MSI, but he has the unique particularities of knowing how to use his skirmishing abilities to control neutral objectives. Just doesn't always translate that in his lanes. Let's meet Yagao, Bilibili's mid laner, who previously was on JDG for 4 years before joining Bilibili in the 13th season, and is known as the best Zoe and Azir of the region. This particular brand of toothpaste is a little threatening. However, his reputation doesn't seem to translate as much this year. He's 8th in KDA amongst other top laners in MSI, lowest creeps per minute, lowest gold per minute, 2nd lowest damage per minute, 9th in kill participation, and 7th in gold share, and with a 3-way tie for 8th place in champions played. And honestly, you look at some of the champions that he has, and it's fairly utility focused. With such a limited pool, he tends to play around his other laners first and foremost to enable the kind of styles of play that they really want to have. This 1 forward and 1-3-1 split push style really is really enabled by how few resources he's willing to work with just to get that going. I do think, however, that if he wants to have some competitive edge, he's going to have to push a little bit further into damage against the other mid laners. Let's meet Elk of Bilibili Gaming, their bot laner, who previously was on World Elite and Ultra Prime for just a brief period before joining Bilibili for the 13th season. And there's something notable about Elk in terms of his KDA and CS per minute is low, but then you look at his gold, damage, and kill participation as well as kill share, being 4th, 2nd, and 4th, and 2nd. He ranks on top of many of his other competitors going into MSI. With 3rd in gold share and 3rd in terms of champions play, he's got the flexibility to back it up. There is a lot that goes into Elk. His team really depends on him, and when it comes clutch, especially in the late game, he really comes through with a lot of the damage he provides and his team fight ability. And this particular way that they play helps immensely in their 1-4 and 1-3-1 format. If Elk did not pull out the numbers that he did, they could not get away with what they did in playoffs. And let's meet On, the support player for Bilibili Gaming. Previously having been part of Suning and Weibo Gaming, joined Bilibili in the 13th season, having been a substitute for Suning/Weibo before going into the main lineup, and then joining here pretty nicely. Couple of things though. He's 11th in KDA, 11th in kill participation, 8th in kill share, so he's not super bloody. Tied for 6th in gold share, but tied also in 4th place for champions played. He's got a flexible champion pool that is demanded of most support players, but he has, unfortunately, some questionable decision making and has been consistent around that particular problem. Otherwise, he falls just slightly below average amongst the rest of the support players around the tournament and may struggle in terms of being able to keep up with Vision. I would have talked more about Vision, but I didn't have the numbers, again, with the limitations of the LPL's data collection. Do expect On to do a lot to enable Elk, but be limited on the expectations of he's going to get caught quite a bit. My final thoughts and expectations for this team. They live and breathe around the ability for Elk and Bin to perform. Using the team fighting around Elk and pulling opponents around the map with Bin, this can go either very badly or excellently, which is why some of the stats don't seem to quite line up with the hype attached to them. If any laner outperforms either Bin or Elk, Bilibili has a harder time approaching the game the way that they like to do it. On top of it, even as Bilibili does show some solid early to mid game play, they often find themselves being their worst enemy. This is a scary team that is prone to flopping when you don't expect it, and yet sometimes popping off in the most extravagant ways. I do expect Bilibili to make it to the second portion of MSI, but at that point, it is up in the air if they can keep up with some of the scarier teams of every other region. Be excited to see these firecrackers go.
Thank you again for watching. Greatly appreciated. These kinds of videos take quite a bit of time. If you're interested, we've got over here more videos about the other teams that have qualified for MSI. And if you're curious about the process in which I've watched every single playoff, here's a playlist of the road itself to MSI. If you have any particular thoughts, comments, or predictions, I'd love to hear those things down below. And if you care to, right below over here, this little button, you can click on it and subscribe. Thank you.